We like to talk about films for your consumption. Come take a seat, I'll tell you something. If you like movies, we're the thing for you. You're watching Film Brew.
Podcast.
Ended up on the wrong chord there. But I mean, like all things in life, you know, sometimes things have to end off on the wrong chord.
Some things, everything ends up on the wrong chord.
But what you gotta do in that situation is just keep singing.
Keep on singing. That's a lesson in life, and that's what FilmBrew is here to teach you, lessons in life.
Exactly. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's Black History Month, or at least it should be by the time that this video is posted.
To honor Black History Month, we'll be spending the month going through some key points and some black filmmakers and the films they've made and how much they've impacted cinema as a whole, which I don't think is talked about a lot, you know. So like, yeah, you know, you never want to, you know, like separate, you know, art from, you know, the people who made it. But I think it's important to talk about the different cultures and the different types of, you know, cultures within film and how, you know, different people of different races, different ethnicities, backgrounds, you know, can make films that are impactful overall. Because I think, as you know, especially in like America, the biggest, you know, films talked about are usually directed by a white male most of the time, you know. And I think it's important to, you know, that's why I wanted to do a whole month. I didn't want to just do a one episode type thing for this month. I think it's important to honor this month and celebrate these films by these great black filmmakers.
But before we get deeper, we can't be called Film Brew without the brew.
You talk about the coffee.
We gotta do that at the same time.
It's too late.
No, with that. Okay. Without the brew. Okay.
Talk about the coffee.
I'm gonna talk about the coffee today while Brody pours you a delicious glass mug of this amazing dark hall coffee that I was gifted by my girlfriend Hannah. Thank you, Hannah, if you're watching. Thank you so much. I was given this for Christmas. It's called The Confessional. It's a Colombian coffee. The tasting notes are almond, kiwi, and blackberry. Roasted by Zandu Coffee on December 14th. So, you know, the people...
Don't say that.
Why?
Don't let them know.
It was
good.
It was roasted on December 14th. And so...
That's fine.
I mean, what a better day to roast... That's actually 2 days before my brother's birthday. So...
Shout out to Christopher
Perez. And I have had this coffee before, so I don't think I think
we've had this coffee.
Yeah, we've had this coffee before.
I think this is I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure this is the standard coffee they give out. Maybe. Either way, I'm sure we've had this coffee before. But that's okay. We're always down for coffee. We haven't had this coffee on the show yet. That's what's more important.
Yeah.
We try not to repeat coffee.
And I will say, you know, like we're a big fan of Dark Hall. Dark Hall is a coffee shop in downtown Phoenix. Great coffee place. You know, we're going to talk about it a lot on this podcast. It's vegan.
It is vegan. Check it out.
You know, so you can go over there, have a nice cup of coffee, have some vegan pastries.
Great pastries, great sweets over there. It is quite delicious.
Yeah, let's just take a sip real quick. I will say, Birdie, this coffee's a little... It's light. It's not a very dark
rose.
Yeah.
Not a very dark hall rose.
The tasting notes are kiwi blackberry, and so it really has it has a more acidic taste than other coffees, in my opinion.
I like that one we got it was a Master None. It was a dark hall one.
We did do dark hall that time too.
But that was something else.
That was crazy.
That coffee was crazy.
I was shaking right after the podcast. I think in the middle of the podcast I was just shaking. But yeah, let's take a sip.
This is dark hall coffee.
This is dark hall, dude. I just feel a little. If you guys like our new table, we've had like 3 different tables on the show. That's because I get one, and I'm like, man, this table's so great for the show. But then my parents throw it away.
But our journalism teacher said, this is the thing he said when we first started. It usually will take 1 to 50 episodes of a podcast for that podcast to realize what the podcast truly is. Because this is half a school project and half our own personal project we're doing, we have to make it 1 out of 5 episodes. Welcome to FilmBrew episode 4.
We got one more to get our shit together.
So bear with us here.
Yeah. So special episode. This today, and you're gonna see this trend throughout the month, and that is Black History. So, I mean, the first film we're gonna talk about today is directed by Barry Jenkins, critically acclaimed.
Best
Moonlight.
Picture winner. Moonlight. Not La La Land, Moonlight.
That's right. It's about a young African American man who grapples with his identity and sexuality while experiencing everyday struggles of childhood, adolescence, and burgeoning adulthood.
Yeah. I think so. It is broken up into 3 parts. It's based off of a play. I believe it was an unpublished play. I think I read it was unpublished. I could be wrong with that. But it's based off a play, and I think it's one of the most well-paced films.
For sure.
I think the whole 3 structure thing works so well with it, and it goes from little when he's a child, Chiron his teenage, and then Black when he's an adult.
Alright, so let's start off with Act 1, Little, right? So in this first act we see Chiron. He is a young boy, I'd say probably like 6-7 years old. Opening scene, we open up seeing our character Juan, and he's going up to some guy standing in the block. I believe
An incredible camera movement. I remember it all hit me realizing how greatly shot this film is.
yes.
The first, it just spins around, and it's so well done. It's such a well shot film.
And so the first time we see Chiron is when he's running away from a group of kids terrorizing him, calling him homophobic slurs, and it's just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So Chiron's running away. He ends up inside of this kind of abandoned apartment complex kind of thing, this little spot, and we see our character Juan actually find him there and kind of takes him into protection because he had firsthand witnessed what Chiron was going through as a young kid.
It's never said, but I think it could be correlation is made between Chiron and Juan, and you could tell that when he, because someone doesn't do something like that unless they see something in that kid. It's either the kid he knows what the kid is gonna go out to, or he himself has been in that position.
I think he does tell him. He's like, I used to be small just like you. He, I think they were at the table and he was telling him that. And, he kind of just becomes a mentor for Chiron, growing up. And, it becomes, apparent that Chiron's home life isn't the most optimal situation. He has a mother who is dealing with drug abuse, and she's working as a sex worker, right?
Yeah.
Or
because
I really only see her with one guy, but I think it's kind of inferred that that's how she makes her money.
Yeah. Anyways, so a lot of the first act is between Juan and Chiron, and they build this really incredible, relationship together that the mom does not like, and we learn why. At one point, it's not just she doesn't like this dude just because why not? We learn that he sells drugs to her. But then we see there's so much tension between the 2 characters, and we don't really know why until that one confrontation between the 2 when he calls her out of the car.
One of the most important parts is how Juan asks Chiron about what role his father plays in his life, and Chiron admits to Juan that his father really isn't there in his life, and that brings Juan to tears because again you can probably infer that that's something that like Juan has in his that he's gone through, and so he probably has that soft spot in that he feels kind of the need to take him in and kind of guide him in the right directions.
And I think one of the at one point, the first day they're together, he ends up bringing him back to the house, and he meets what seems to be his girlfriend or wife, and they end up having a relationship. He very much sees a mother figure in Teresa, and his mom doesn't very much like that. And so his mom is obviously portrayed, you know, but it's a big reason I love this film and his characters. And you get a extremely flawed character, probably the most flawed character in the film, his mother, and yet you still understand, you know, like you understand her at times, you know.
There's this part where Chiron tells Juan, he's like, yeah, he says, I hate my mom. And then Juan says, like, you know, I used to hate my mom too, but now I miss her like hell. And like that's really powerful, because, you know, while you can look at all these flaws that Chiron's mom has, it's still his mom, you know, like this is still someone in his life. And we see it in later in the film of the role his mom plays in his life. But I mean, you just got to think, like, they're in a bad place, you know. They're in not a good neighborhood, and his mom, really, if you think about it, is just trying to survive. Is really just trying to survive. And this is, and it becomes more powerful when you think this is a situation that millions of people in this country are in.
And so he builds a better relationship with these two people than he obviously has with his mother. And he's Chiron, you know, is a very quiet kid, you know, obviously gets picked on a lot, so he's very closed off. And having a mother like that, you know, you would be very closed off in that way too. But he opens up to them very slowly, but opens up to them. And one of the most powerful scenes in the film, a scene that I'm not ashamed to say makes me, you know, bawl my eyes out, you know, especially when I rewatched it for this film, was when he was a specific slur to push hate against gay people. He asks, you know, he was like, what is that? And then he asks if he is one. And they have a very, you know, even, it's so strange because even, you know, in 2022, a conversation like that just seems so unrealistic, but at the same time, you know, that could, you know, there's people like that, you know, that could happen.
And that really puts Juan in a really, like, tricky space, having to explain to this kid what this word means that he's getting called. And, you know, Juan tries to make it, like, put into his head that being this way, he doesn't really have to know yet. He tells them, you know, don't worry yet. This is not something you gotta worry about yet.
And he asks if he is one, and it's not the whole, you know, he says no, you know, he's like, you can be gay, but you don't have to let anyone call you that, you know. But like in, you know, a lot of situations, at least in, you know, my experience and a lot of other people's experience, you know, that conversation doesn't always go that way. And it's so, he's such a great character. He's a flawed character, you know, and that's what I love about this film, is even Chiron himself has many flaws. All the characters feel really, you know, there's so much depth into these characters.
Mahershala Ali, yeah, so he actually did win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
Twice.
Twice.
I think the second one was for Green Book.
Oh, okay.
I think.
So towards the end of the first act, there's this like really crazy scene, and this is groundbreaking, dude, because it's, so basically Juan takes Chiron out into the ocean and try to
beautiful score,
teach him how to swim, basically. And you know, he's out there, he's teaching him how to swim, and once they come back into shore, there's a lot that is unfolded, and some very powerful things are said.
One of the greatest lines in the film.
It's really subtle, what is said, but Juan basically tells Chiron that, he says something along the lines of, I've been in many places, and he said, you know, every place I've been to, there's never been a place without black people. And while that sounds pretty subtle, like, you just got to think about it for a minute, because I mean, think about telling this like little kid that there are black people outside of this small community that he's in. You know, that's like, that must be crazy, you know, for a little kid to kind of comprehend that.
And there's something that he said that a very simple thing, but again, it means so much. And you're saying something like, you know, you can't let anyone choose who you are or something. And that becomes such a devastating line to look back on back towards the end of the film, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Moving on to Act 2 of the film, titled Chiron. This we see Chiron maybe 10 years older in high school. Juan and Teresa still play a role in Chiron's life. He, spends the night at his mother's house, or he spends the night at Juan and Teresa's house. It kind of interchangeably. We see his mother is still pretty much in the same position that she was.
It's gotten worse at the point, like to the point where she's taking money from him.
Yeah, we have a scene like Chiron and his mom.
Yeah.
They're yelling at each other. She needs money for to get drugs, and she takes the money from him. And you got to think like how this might feel to someone.
Yeah.
When your own mom is.
And I think it's after that scene happens, or a little after that he sees his mom on the couch, sleeping, and puts a blanket over her. And there's that line where she's like, "I know you don't love me no more, but I need you to know that I love you," and something. And he just, it's the way he interacts with his mom is so powerful. Every person who played Chiron, from little to black, absolutely great. The fact that you could do a film like that and have these three actors feel like this, like that feels, there's Chiron, those three actors, they're Chiron, they played it so well. And the delivery and the way lines are said and the way lines are taken in, it's so strong. And again, it may be because it's adapted off of a play, but I still think it's directed really well, and the performances are incredible with this whole thing.
So Ashton Sanders actually played Chiron as a teenager. Incredible performance. I think Chiron in that act was probably played the best, in my opinion.
It's the most vulnerable we see him. This is where this is before everything like really crashes down, but we see him really coming into touch at to a certain extent with who he is, and it's so sad to see that that kind of just gets taken away from him.
So after we see his whole home situation, his relationship with his mother and how that's progressed, and his relationship with Juan and Teresa, we see what Chiron's life is in high school. We see Chiron as
Kevin's back.
Kevin is back.
He's still cool with Kevin.
We see Chiron. He's picked on.
He still gets picked on.
It's severely,
if not worse.
We're not talking about schoolyard bullying. This is straight up harassment.
It is harassment at one point. There's threats made at one point.
He's still called the same names, if not just worse.
Done so well. Like that whole scene where they find him in the street and they just start kind of making fun of him just because he's wearing tight pants.
Yeah, make fun of his mom too.
Yeah, they talked about his mom and
all his vulnerabilities.
And it's such a well executed scene, and I think it feels so real.
It does.
It's such a realistic film, and it's such a strong film. And even seeing these devastating things happen.
Yeah, we see his relationship with Kevin is still there. Kevin's kind of a guy who, Chiron can not really talk to, but he's not
the only person outside of, Teresa and them that he could talk to,
Yeah. That wouldn't immediately, harass or slander him when he sees them. Chiron isn't necessarily open with Kevin, just like he's not necessarily open with many other people at this stage in his life, but he is just more comfortable probably with Kevin than anyone else at his school. So yeah, we see an interaction with him and Kevin just kind of in the school while he's trying to avoid some of the people who are harassing him. And Kevin tells Chiron about a sexual experience that he had, and we kind of see this have a little bit of an impact on him.
Yeah.
Chiron has nightmares about this experience that Kevin talked to him about, and it's kind of just at this point Chiron is still battling that uncertainty about his sexuality. He's never had a sexual experience with anyone, and kind of Kevin bringing this up to him is like something that he's never experienced before.
Yeah.
So of course this could have an effect on him.
So Kevin and him are at the beach. This is later in the act, but they're at the beach, and he's talking about how the breeze feels so good that it can make him cry. And this is the first time we see Chiron really break from something. Like, he turns to him like, "You cry?" And then he opens up saying, "Hey, I cry all the time. I cry so much I feel like I'm gonna turn into a drop or something.
He's gonna drip away.
Drip away, yeah. And so that's the relationship builds off of that, because Chiron doesn't really open up to anyone up to that point in the film. And
this is the first time we really see him open up, right? Like, we don't really see him even speak very much up until this point with Kevin, and he kind of becomes vulnerable with Kevin, and they kind of just start talking about things that Chiron doesn't really talk to anyone else about.
Been, so shut off from talking about.
And I guess this kind of them becoming open with each other, really them showing each other's vulnerability sparks something between them.
It's so devastating too at the same time, because this is the one, he finally, the barrier is broken here. He's finally able to release who he is. This is Chiron. This is who he is, and all of that's taken away from him the next day.
Yeah. So then the next day, Chiron comes to school, and Kevin, he's, I guess, not the person that he lets out to be. He's
kind of in the same place as Chiron is, and we see it very little done in this scene, where you see that he's peer pressured into doing things just so he could basically so he could survive, basically. So he's kind of in the same boat as Chiron is, but he's more scared in a way that he'll do more things to just be able to make it through, which is being a high school student. It's so awful, but it's also something that we've all been in that place before, or we do things we don't want to just to be able to survive and make it through. And so the dude who bullies Chiron through his high school years goes up to Kevin and is like, "Hey, remember this game we used to play in elementary school?" And he's all like, "If I point someone out, you would put them down." And he's like, "That's the game." We see them outside, and it's very obvious he's going to choose Chiron and say, "Hey, knock him down." We're trying not to spoil this movie that too much,
because we want you to watch it.
Yes.
These are films
watch this film.
These are important films.
Very important films. So put a timestamp up, or when we're done talking about the scene. Anyways, Kevin knocks down Chiron because he's told to by the dude.
And this is all peer pressure. We see actually Kevin hesitant.
And he says stay down,
but
don't keep standing up.
He got back up, and
Chiron keeps getting up.
He just kept knocking him down, and you gotta imagine what this might feel for Chiron. Him expressing, doing something that he's never done with anyone else before, being vulnerable with Kevin, and Kevin betraying him like that. It really just, it must,
it's devastating, man.
Like Chiron might have felt like he finally found a person who he can open up to and who might care about him.
And so we see Chiron turn into a whole different character from that 3 minutes of when he drops him off to when he's almost sits by him by lunch. We see him happy in a sort of way, like he feels good about himself, and it's just all taken away so fast.
Yeah.
The next day, it was weird. Before I rewatched this film, I always imagined this the scene of him going to the school to the chair scene. That whole scene in my head was a one shot for some reason, until I rewatched it and realized, it's not one shot. What is the one when in the classroom?
Yeah.
But I thought the whole thing in my head, it was also, compact, that I remembered that whole scene as just one shot.
I think it's because of the suspense that it really brings. Chiron, we don't see him like this the entire film.
The first time I watched this, I had no idea what he was gonna do. I knew he was gonna do something, but I didn't know, what he was gonna do.
Yeah.
And even on a second watch, it's still so.
So he comes to school and he seeks revenge on his bully. Basically grabs a chair and breaks it over his head, knocking his bully down. And this is something we've never seen Chiron do. This is totally outside of his character.
In a bad way. We see him break in a good way. He breaks the barrier in an emotional way, and then we see him break the barrier in a very negative way. We see the two sides of it. he's no longer Chiron. Which I think I mean looking too much into it, but I was always thinking about, I think the first part's called Little, because that's who he was. He wasn't Chiron. This one's called Chiron because he was Chiron for for that one moment. And then the third act, which we're about to get into, he's called Black.
Yeah.
Because he's that Chiron was there, but never again would he be that Chiron that he who he is, who he really was.
Yeah. So yeah, end of Act 2, Chiron's taken off to
Atlanta, I think it was.
Yeah, to Atlanta for what juvenile juvenile detention center in Atlanta for assaulting, I guess was what they got him for, his bully. And so that's kind of where Act 2 ends right there. Act 3 we see it's Act 3 called Black. We see Chiron now more grown, probably in his like
very different than the Chiron we've seen.
We see a very different Chiron.
He's working on the streets, and what does he call it? He's trapping.
He's
now?
Trapping.
Yeah. So he's working as that, and I think it's important to say that he talks a lot more.
Yeah.
Talks a lot more, and it's very short. It's I think like 5 minutes. We see this new Chiron who he's become. He's very talkative. He's a lot more put together. He's a lot more strong.
Yeah.
And then he has a call from his mother. Like that, he still has the nightmares. He still has the nightmares, and he gets calls from his mother.
Chiron has changed himself to kind of fit the person who wouldn't be judged by other people.
Yeah.
Like I guess he felt that the moment he let himself be who he was struck down, and so he kind of became the person.
Again.
Yeah, he would never be that person again. He would be someone who wouldn't made to feel little.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically we see this new Chiron for a little while, and then the phone rings. He thinks it's his mom, and he picks it up, and it's Kevin. Anyway, and it's Kevin. All right, let's hold on. Before we go into that, I'm gonna open this up. This is a Liquid Death. It's a mango chainsaw.
Break
it's
time.
It's a
Liquid
new.
Death, please sponsor us. We just need
sponsor
you to
us.
sponsor us.
New flavoring. Mango chainsaw. Look at that. That's super cool. I just want to open it because I'm thirsty. Coffee dehydrates you. I love coffee. I love coffee more than anyone else, but it's important. Always drink water before and after you drink coffee. This is sparkling water, but it will work.
All right, so coffee mango chainsaw. Wow,
Damn.
You've never had it before?
This just came out, dog.
Yeah, I know it came out, but you've never had it?
Nah, I was waiting.
For me?
Yeah. Taste that.
You're so sweet.
God damn.
Oh, man.
Kevin is on the phone. He's like, Mom, it's really late. He's like, hey, this ain't your mom. This ain't your mother. It's Kevin, And we see him go back to Chiron. We see him go back to who he was. Everything we just saw for the last 5 minutes is gone. He's no longer strong. His past has come back. The past is inevitably always going to come back. And we see him shut down again. We see Chiron. This is who he is. He's now quiet. He's not speaking no more. He ain't in charge of his life
Kevin
no more.
actually points it out. Kevin's like, you haven't changed a bit, have you? When he obviously has changed a lot. 20 calories, huh?
Hey, it's fine.
Hey, 20 calories ain't nothing.
It ain't nothing. You got acid in it though. Just some more acid. What's mango? This is really good. Anyway, so yeah, it's and so he goes back to Miami
to reunite with Kevin.
And he sees his mom. He decides, he's going back. He's gonna go see his mom. And again, we no longer. It's so weird that, and I think it's important that we see Chiron in those 5-something minutes of him, in his new life.
Yeah.
And then spend the rest, 30-ish last minutes of the film seeing him back again as Chiron of who he really is, because he's with his mom. Still the same dude, that's still Chiron, the way he talks to his mom and stuff. He's a little slightly more open about things, but he's still very closed off and scared of his mom. And his mom again is still doing better, but still the same in a way. She's the same person. She's doing different things. She's doing better things for herself, but she's still that same person. And Chiron and her, obviously, nothing can really fix that childhood.
But I mean, it does show that Chiron's like, this is still my mom. This is still someone that I have to aren't that I care about.
Chiron could easily just not have visited his mom, but he went down there and did. I think that's important for his character. And so we spend the last, I think, like 15-20 minutes with Kevin. And because I again, like I said, it's such a well-paced film.
Yeah.
Incredibly well-paced. Kevin had a kid and is working as this little chef in this little diner.
Mm-hmm.
It's an honest job though. I really like that little spew he gives about it's like, hey, I'm making shoe money, but I never had to. I have nothing to worry about anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful scene because it's like Chiron is just and it's so, again, I think I use this word a lot, devastating, because I think this film it's really devastating at times. Even if the ending is slightly optimistic, it's still a devastating portrayal to see this, Chiron, talking to Kevin, he really realizes that he has become, everything, he's not himself, he isn't himself,
Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin invites him to the diner, so he comes to the diner, sits down. Kevin comes to take his order, and he's like, yeah, what would you like, sir? And then they make eye contact, and Kevin realizes that this is Chiron.
He says, hey, come sit down, I'll cook you up a meal. And they talk.
The chef's special.
Yeah. And so, a great scene. We see him doing a little cooking. I love that little scene.
Yes.
And he goes eat, and they're talking, they're drinking, And there's still great chemistry between, we haven't seen these actors before in the film, but we've seen these characters.
Yeah.
I think that's why these two performances are in my opinion, these two performances are one of the best of the film because of the fact that they, they're acting as characters we've seen throughout the film, but we haven't seen these actors in the film yet. And yet they play the characters so well that, oh yeah, that's Kevin, that's Chiron. We've seen these characters grow to this point, Kevin talks about he has a kid now, and he's like, so what are you doing now? And he, says it. He was like, you want to be real? Like, I'm trapping now. This is what he says. And, it's obviously Kevin is, kind of put off by this,
Because this isn't someone who, Kevin only knows Chiron from high school, and he sees this like completely out of Chiron's kind of character, and so he's put off. How could this Kevin that I knew, who was a very
and you sense there's that sense of guilt, because there's that part of Kevin that knows he might have been at fault for all that, but they continue on. He leaves for a little bit because they're like, you don't know me, and stuff, and there's always that little tension, but he leaves for a little bit, then he comes back and he's all like, so why did you call me here? And one of them, I always love this scene. This is out of all the scenes that stuck with me, this was the one that, from the moment I first watched this film to when I rewatched it, the scene I was looking forward to the most. It's stuck with me. I don't know why this scene of all scenes is the one that stuck with me the most, but it's when he's like, yeah, I told you to play that song. So he goes to the jukebox and he plays Hello Stranger. And it's just, it pans to him to sitting at the diner and he walks towards
Again, great camera work in this film.
Incredible directing, man. Barry Jenkins, incredible director. And yeah, that scene is so beautiful because so much is said within that, and so then they go home,
Sorry.
But yeah, so they go home and there's that, the sense of is like, so where are you gonna stay? It was like, hey.
Kind of saying, why don't you come to my place?
Yeah.
Sharon turns up the music. Quick thing.
That
song, Classic Man. When me and David were like 12 years old, he showed me that song. So after watching this movie, I don't know what he was trying to tell me, but
dude, hey, that's David. Hey, you guys know David from our first podcast.
He hasn't been back, but he will be back. I swear to you guys, he will
Wayne's
be back.
World. I wasn't supposed to say that. That comes soon. Either way, anyways, so yeah, they listen to Classic Man. And then they go to his house, and that's where he talks about, it's like, yeah, I make shoe money, but it's honest living, I'm not on the streets no more, he feels proud of himself, because he's doing better for his kid.
Yeah.
And that's where you see Chiron just, from the moment he gets to the diner, from this moment, we see Chiron, his, guard, breaking unwillingly. It's obviously he doesn't want that to break, but it's breaking whether he wants to or not. And it leads to a very emotional and very, strong interaction between them in their kitchen.
The important part to me in this whole Act 3 is that kind of Chiron and Kevin's who they are kind of flipped.
Yes.
From in high school. So while in high school Kevin was being a person who he really wasn't, just to survive. Nice. Just to survive, while Chiron was struggling, trying to kind of express who he really was and trying to be honest with himself in high school. That incident where that whole thing between Kevin and Chiron, Kevin betraying Chiron going to juvenile detention. Act 3, we kind of see it flip, where Chiron is now a person who he's really not to survive. And Kevin, now a more true to himself person. I like what you said about he's doing honest work. He's making shoe money, but it's honest. He's happy. He doesn't have as much worry in his life. Well, Chiron, he's turned himself into pretty much what he hated.
And when they're talking about that and how they both had different pathways, if I remember correctly, it's not brought up in any other way than Chiron just saying it, right out in the open. It's like, you're the only man who's ever touched me. And it was in that scene that, they kind of just look at each other like that, and it's everything comes back.
It's a long pause, but what's going on, like they're just looking
crying
at each other, and it's crazy.
It's the ending of this film is so beautiful. I think that's a good place to stop. So I think that would be a good place to end this discussion with this film. There's so much to be said about this film, and there's so much we left out of this film, but that's because we want you guys as an audience to watch this film. It's a great film. Barry Jenkins, great film, who also directed If Beale Street Could Talk, another fantastic film. Go watch that film too. It's on Hulu. If Beale Street Could Talk, great film.
But on the topic of you guys watching these films with us,
we would like to talk about what next week's episode is going to be, and next week's episode is going to be The Watermelon Woman, directed by Cheryl Denier.
Woman is actually streaming on Prime Video and Hulu.
And it's also just to rent it. So if you want to join us for next week and have the film already in your head, we'd love that. We'd love if you guys watch the film. And also, this has been the first episode we've recorded for like 2 months or something.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to get back into like the whole thing.
Yeah, we want to apologize because everything with
it's been busy.
Holiday and
a new semester,
starting a new semester, we kind of gotten sidetracked. Getting and college. We're going to college, dude, and we gotta get all that stuff
is
together.
Really busy, but we have a schedule now.
Yeah, we've gotten our stuff together.
The plan is to do an episode every week through February, and for March. By the time summer comes, I think that April might be a little. But we'll discuss that when we get there.
Yeah.
Moonlight, incredible film directed by Barry Jenkins.
Go watch it. Just go watch it, please.
It won Best Picture for a reason.
It's relatively short too.
It's kind of short.
It ended before. It felt like 30 minutes in my viewing experience.
If you watch it, comment. If you haven't watched it but you have something to say, comment. We love to discuss stuff with you in comments. So I guess we'll see you next week on the Film Brew. Great coffee. Thank you, Dark Hall. Liquid Death. Incredible mango chainsaw.
Sponsors.
New flavor. Great stuff.
Hey, sponsors.
Thank you for watching. Moonlight, great film. Watch it.
Watch it.
Moonlight,
right
great film.
Go watch it.
Go watch Moonlight right now.
Right when you turn this video off,
go
watch the
Moonlight.
movie. Watch the movie.
Watch Moonlight.
Want to talk about Moonlight for your discussion?
Anyway.
Birdie, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.
We like to talk about films for your consumption. Come take a seat, I'll tell you something. If you like movies, we're the thing for you. You're watching Film Brew
Podcast. This has been the FilmBrew podcast. This has been the FilmBrew podcast.
This is the Film Brew
We'll see you in
podcast.
episode 4. We'll see you in episode 5. We'll see you in episode 5. The Watermelon Woman, Cheryl Denier. Next week.
Watch Moonlight right now. You know what? First person to comment on this video, I will buy Moonlight for you.
The first person that comments on the
swear,
video,
I will buy
Moonlight for you, and we'll send it to you.
You have to watch it, but if you watch it, you have to write me a 5-page analysis.
Yes.
On Moonlight.
First person to comment.
Or else I will. What is it called?
Mrs. Scott, Mr. Sane. Who else comments on our videos?
Mr. Severson. Watch
Anna Rouse.
Rance Rosario.
Melanie Garcia, Rance Rosario.
David Flores.
Delicia McHenry. I don't think any of you guys really do watch it, but if you do, comment.
And you're
We'll
watching
buy
this,
you Moonlight.
Dude, we'll buy you Moonlight. You gotta write a 5-page report, or else I'm gonna. What is it called? When the
Your cousin.
When the IRS knocks
Your
on
cousins.
your door.
Hopefully.
Ricardo, you watch Moonlight. Watch it again.
Watch it again. If you see Moonlight, watch it again.
If you don't watch Moonlight, I'm gonna come to your house and like the IRS knock on your door and they're gonna tear it down and take away your bed, and you're watching FilmBrew.
See you next week for the Watermelon Woman. Thank you. God damn.